Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. And he offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now, you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, and I researched them and I found a really cool fact about this Borden family.
So, today, Robert will be educating us on his Lost Gravestone of South Hadley tour. So, the Lost Gravestone, tell us about the Bowden family.
All right, this is a family that came to South Hadley and, of course, settled in South Hadley Center at first. But gradually they came down to South Hadley Falls and had a home right across. They had members that would be buried in South Hadley Falls at some point. And that's the question. So one day I knew that there must have been some burials in the old South Hadley Cemetery that in 1902, 03, and 04 must have found their way down to the South Hadley Falls Cemetery. The South Hadley Center old cemetery was being taken out in order to make way for the Gaylord Library. And a lot of the burials were moved into the back of Evergreen or the midsection of Evergreen, depending upon if the family wanted them there or not. But I was walking through the South Hadley Falls Cemetery last year, and I said, which one of any of these stones here looked like they must have came from the center? And you can tell by the dates. And you can also tell by the arrangement of the stones nearby are newer stones, are stones that don't fit the dates that are on the gravestone you're looking at. So I came up with two stones in South Hadley Falls Cemetery, and I think they're the only two where the whole family was brought from the old South Hadley Cemetery into the Falls Cemetery. And I proved that by looking at the list. Okay, so about the Bowden family itself. It's a family that, like I told you, most of the time they were up in the center, but the father of the group moved down, and he became, he was a lawyer, but he became very well known in the Falls. His name was William Bowden. He lived from 1786 to 1856. And he was married twice. His first wife had died young, Laura, and so he got married to Harriet after that. But they had many children. And his first wife, he had two. With his second wife, he had 6 more children. And they would be buried either in the Falls or in the center. Now, if your family does, you want to have one grouping, if you have the money. So in 1904, the family wanted to have them all together and brought down the 7 bodies that were up in the center and put them in the Falls Cemetery. And the stone is towards the left. It's a very large white stone. Bowden is Bowdin. And the children themselves, when they went on to have some grandchildren, most of the grandchildren come from one of the sons. So William Bowden had a son named Henry, and 4 of his 5 children are buried in the South Hadley Falls Cemetery. Now, the Bowden family before that came from where? And before that came from Boston. So they had been in Massachusetts even before 1904 for almost 200 years. And they had come from England. They had changed their last name very slightly. And when they settled down, they had fallen into regular jobs after a while. And they started getting better and better jobs. And this William Bowden, the father of all these many children buried here, was probably the most successful. He had a very large, beautiful home, like I told you, right across from that old library. So, very importantly, some of the grandchildren went on to careers in the art field, and I'm going to be able to describe them at some point.
So, tell us about the Bowden gravestone and family plot.
Okay, so if you want to go visit it, you go on the road entrance from Main Street called Cemetery Road. Then, once you're near the flagpole, go to the left, and there's going to be off to the side of the largest of the white stones. And that stone says Bowden. It has in front, on the sides of it, I believe there's two to the left and two to the right of smaller stones. And then in front of it is like 7 in a row. And it's nice going through who they are. And you can do that. And on my webpage, I have the family tree right out. And I also have their names with the full names with the birthday and the death dates. So you can go through all the members of the family that are buried here. Now, on my family tree that I put onto this website, I put a square around the ones that are actually buried in front of you. And so you can actually go through and look at the stones and read about that person. If the person has a lot more to say about them, then I'll write more and more over and over again. Now, a good thing has happened. When I gave this presentation to Science Library in the year 2022, the South Hadley Cable Access Channel videotaped the presentation, and that's now on their website. And it's linked through my webpage too. So you can have all things Bowden on this one page, and so you can go through all the particular details. And it's a fun thing to do because this is one of the nicest families in South Hadley.
So, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or want to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you are interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting out for the day. So getting back to our interview, where did the Bowden family live?
Okay, so I described some of it, Boston out to where they were lawyers and farmers, and then to South Hadley where they did the same. And then the family started to spread out. So, for instance, one of their sons and one of their daughters moved to New York City. Some of the grandchildren stayed in South Hadley. One of the sons, moved out to, I believe it was Ohio, and he actually became Ohio State's rep, and then he became a federal level representative from Ohio to the federal government, and then he became part of the presidential departments. I forget which one, but it was a family that succeeded and spread it out greatly, and I'm thankful that their family home is still in the Falls. It's directly across from that old library, and I was able to visit the front and back of it to see what it must have been like. It's a gigantic colonial home.
So describe the artwork of Harriet Bowden.
All right, so Harriet Bowden, she was an impressionist painter. She is the one that moved to New York City, and very easy to find. I put some on my webpage linked from there, but you can just type in the word Harriet Bowden art, and when you do, you'll find out that she's actually a pretty good artist. Her artwork, being impressionist, she's not the forerunner of the impressionist movement, but it's still very good impressionist work. Her art sells for in the range from a few $1,000s up to some artwork I found was up to $50,000. So she's done a great job, and it's nice to see that someone could be this successful from South Hadley. Also, one of her sisters who stayed behind in South Hadley was also an artist, probably not on the scale that she was, and her name was Bertaline Bowden. Now the kicker is this is very peculiar. One of her brothers, William Bowden, was an art critic for one of the newspapers in New York, and he was so good at being an art critic that he was the main art critic for this New York newspaper. And he wrote several books also about art. And one of the nicest books I've ever seen that he did was a book called The Rise of the Book Plates. And book plates are papers you put inside the end plates of a book. And those started out very plain, but through time became very elaborate. They became one of the strong points of buying a book, so you can have these beautiful book plates put in, and you can sign your name and your location. And so he wrote a book about how book plates changed through history, how they became much more stylish and sophisticated. So this is a very peculiar story about one wonderful family, how their gravestone was moved from the old cemetery to the new, and only two families had that done, and how their grandchildren became so active in the art world, to such a point that one was a very famous artist in the United States, and the other was a famous critic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners again for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. And again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in.